I long ago discovered that when feeding my girlfriends, what we want is food that we can pick at, food that we can gossip over. But what I think now is that suits everyone. That's to say, not some formal knife and fork supper, but food you can just relax over, and that's for the person eating and the person cooking. There has to be a red kidney bean dip, like a terracotta-coloured nubbly version of hummus, and a Moorish badanjaan dip with smoky eggplant, creamy yoghurt and mint. Then little bowls of exotic bulgur wheat and nut salad, thick with fresh herbs. Some green fattoush, a salad with hot chilies, cool herbs, crisp lettuce and baked pitta shards. And something hot, and what better than aromatic lamb meatballs? A perfect exotic evening. Sometimes when you're cooking, all you need to do is just tweak slightly something that is quite familiar, and it suddenly becomes new and special. Hummus, we associate with chickpeas, but what I'm making here is a terracotta tinted, sweet and earthy red kidney bean version. And this sweetness is intensified by the fact that I'm starting off with a base of onion cooked slowly until it browns, along with 3 fat cloves of garlic. I need 1 can of red kidney beans along with all the gloop. On top of that, I want a good red dollop of tomato paste or puree. Stir well. Now it's beginning to come alive. And some spices, and these spices will waft their way throughout this meal. I want half a teaspoon of ground coriander. In it goes. Ditto ground cumin. And I want just a 1/4 teaspoon, a sweet whisper of cinnamon. All this is pungent and earthy and sweet. To balance that, I need an edge of sourness, and you don't get much sourer than lime. I want the zest and the juice, and although I don't need the zest till later, I find it really hard to zest citrus fruit once I've squeezed the juice out. So I'm just doing this now to make my life easier. Now for the juice, and I'm just going to squeeze it straight into the pan. Juicy, juicy. We can turn the heat off now. Okay, let's taste the most important part of cooking. Salt, definitely. That's great. And in a moment, by the miracle of modern technology, what looks like a pan of chili con carne will be blitzed into a terracotta, grainy and nubbly puree. Lovely. Like a nice Eastern Mediterranean facial here. And once this is cooled, I can stow it safely in the fridge. Now, on to my meatballs. Aromatic lamb meatballs. This is perfect girl food, because the meatballs are so teeny tiny, really not just small, but tight and small, that you can eat quite a few without really admitting to yourself that you're actually eating. I've got a pound of ground lamb here. It's about 500 grams of minced lamb, and I know it looks like there's only a small amount of meat there, but I can get 70 meatballs out of that, and I mean 70, not 17. Watch. To this meat, I want to add 4 finely chopped scallions, 4 juicy spring onions. Cut them finely and just bother with the white and pale green part. The kind of more unfurled, brighter green bit at the end will be too tough. Fine. In they go. And now the all-important spicage. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon is used in meat dishes a lot in the Eastern Mediterranean, and it really works because, of course, as well as being sweet, there's a certain amount of heat. And now I want a whole teaspoon of ground allspice. I'm going to use 2 of these little half teaspoon measures. Now, allspice has a kind of echo again of cinnamon, and it also has a slightly more earthy, almost bitter clove taste. And a teaspoon of green, grassy cumin. And I want a teaspoon of salt because meatballs that are undersalted are a great disappointment. So be brave. All meatballs need some sort of carbohydrate to act as a filler. I mean, after all, meatballs evolved, I suppose, as a way of eking out more expensive protein. I don't use breadcrumbs, which is normal. I use semolina because I like the sort of sweetness it imparts. And it's so finely milled that it'll get easily absorbed. That's 3 tablespoons. And last of all, to help bind the meat, an egg. And now the work begins. Just turn the mixture in your fingers. Don't be afraid of using your hands. I think the only way to learn how to cook is by learning how things feel. It's a bad thing to be squeamish because it means in effect you're frightened of the food you're cooking. That's ready and mixed. I want all the flavours here to mingle and develop for a while, so I'll stand this mixture in the fridge before we're ready to roll later. So a bit of cling. And into the fridge with this. For me, the ritual of building together this meal, building it up, is part of the pleasure of the party. This is the beginning of my badinjane dip, and badinjane for me has a wonderfully poetic ring. What it means is eggplant or aubergine. I've got 4 little ones which I've blistered in a really hot oven for about an hour, and what I need to do to them now is make a little incision and remove their sort of pale green buff interior to a waiting sieve. Just want to get rid of some of the liquid which will cause bitterness. I know they look a bit sad and wrinkled, but that is what gives all that lovely smoky flavour, and by cooking them in a hot oven you get a kind of char-grilled flavour, only without the smoke. Right, now I've done with all my flaying for the day. I'm going to push down on this pale mush just to get rid of any excess liquid. And the point of this dip, my badinjane dip, is that it's smooth, 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 made smoother with some yogurt. But I like a bit of contrast, especially in the texture. So on top, I'm going to sprinkle some pine nuts, which I want to toast. When they're done, the resiny aroma will float up to me. Saffron adds its own almost sharp flavour, as well as, I feel, a touch of luxury. I'm using threads, and I'll get about 1/4 teaspoon. And the best way of getting the flavour out here is by infusing the threads in water, warm water. And if you're using powdered, I would just use a fat pinch. That's a technical term, obviously. Now, mint. I love this herb. It somehow manages to be both refreshing and peppery at the same time. That I'm going to strew on the badinjane dip along with the pine nuts. Great. Check on the pine nuts. Lovely and toasted. And by toasted, I just mean that you fry them, as it were, in an oilless pan until they get like little bronze cheeks. Now, as with the red kidney bean dip, I've cooked an onion, very finely chopped, but just long enough so it almost begins to caramelize, and 3 fat cloves of garlic. Add the aubergine to this. The saffron in its now fragrant juice goes in, and I'm going to whisk a bit just so that I can break up the fibres of that resistant eggplant. And can you see how quickly the colour changes here? Now for the yoghurt, I like to use Greek style yoghurt, which is thicker and more voluptuous really, but use whatever yoghurt you want. I've got a cupful. Gently, firmly as well, does it. No need to be violent, but stir as if you meant it. I want everything to mingle together, all the flavours to marry. Quick taste. Lovely, but I do want a bit more pepper. And salt. That's it, all together. Taste again. Perfect. In goes this pale, soothing, but flavoursome dip. On top, a small drizzle of glass green olive oil. My lovely toasted pine nuts. A fresh green scattering of mint. And that's another part done. When I'm making an exotic banquet, I don't cook everything myself. I like to go shopping for bits and pieces to turn everything into a fabulous feast. The whole point of this dinner is that you can pick at everything, and I think these red peppers will be perfect. I want some olives. I like these large green ones because they taste very sharp and fresh, but I want something that's very different as well. And these black ones are so strong, really lovely. Oh, and I want some feta. Gotta have pistachios. And although I do like the pistachios when they're in their shells, got my girlfriends coming round for supper. Wouldn't want any of them to break a nail, would I? Enough shopping, I must make myself go now. Much as I want this feast to be a whole array of dishes, I don't want to give myself completely back-breaking labour, and this bulgur wheat and nut salad is incredibly easy, not least because the bulgur wheat, which is like cracked wheat, makes a kind of rice or pasta salad if you like, only no cooking. What I've done is put about a cupful, about 150 grams, into a bowl and poured over about 3 cups, 3/4 of a litre of boiling water, and then just left it to steep. Now I'm just going to get the last bit of excess liquid out. Look how lovely and swollen this is. And just tumble it into a bowl. So I'm going to start off the dressing with the juice of half a big fat lemon. Every last bit out. I like using really coarse salt, lovely fat flakes of it. So I think it's best really to add it now so it can begin to dissolve into the acid of the lemon juice. It's about a teaspoon here. And now back to the sour note, and this is fantastically sour. It's pomegranate molasses, which sounds like it's going to be sweet. It isn't. What this is pomegranate juice that has been boiled down and down until you've got a thick, dark, sticky syrup full of sourness. I want a spoonful of this. Well, a dressing needs a bit of oil. 3 tablespoons or so straight into my sour liquid in here. I think a bit of an old stir up. So that's really the sour and the liquid elements. Now I want, if you like, the smell. So some herbs. I'm using whole cumin seed rather than ground cumin because I want that faint crunch and the sort of grassiness you get from having, like, well, I suppose they look like little stalks. It's a teaspoon of that. And I'm taking my little teeny bubby quarter spoon out just to add some ground allspice. Very nice and pungent, wow. And bravely, a little note of sweetness against all that tang. Quarter teaspoon of cinnamon. Familiar by now. I promised you a nut and bulgur wheat salad. The nuts in question, some natural unblanched almonds, gorgeously matte and cocoa coloured, about a third of a cup, 50 grams. Just chop these roughly. It's wise to go slowly because, as you can see, it's very easy to spray the work surface with bits of nut. Don't worry about uniformity. What I like is to have some nuts basically halved and other nuts shaved into smithereens with this blade. Bung them in. Same again with some pistachios. I love that greenness with the sort of rosy hue around the edges. These get chopped up too. They're slightly easier, they're a bit softer than the almonds. Again, don't worry about uniformity, just chop away. These go in top as well. And I've got some sour cherries, dried sour cherries, which add, a wonderful chewiness. And again, that sour sweetness, which is so beguiling. About a quarter of a cup will do. And the last touch, some parsley. So there's a lot of chopping and stirring, which I quite like. Right, so we finished the chopping. Let's do a bit of stirring. Some of the parsley in, all the dressing over. Wow, killer dressing. When you're stirring things like rice or couscous or this bulgur wheat, I think it's best always to proceed with forks. Just helps keep everything fluffy. Just going to have a quick taste. It's an awful thing to say, but I can't think of a way of improving it. So, I'm going to try and get everything into one of these little meze bowls, simply because I love it when it's really piled up. Okay, I've failed in my mission to get everything into one bowl. Not so miserable a failure, it means we've got lots to eat. Teeny bit of parsley. And the herbed nut and bulgur wheat salad is ready for the eating. I love all the soft and gungy dips we've got going on. But I like contrast and I need crunch. So you can get that from the toasted pitta here and also from this fabulous bank of bite-sized pieces of romaine lettuce. And these two components are always the foundation for fattoush, a salad with toasted bread in it. But this one is different, it's all green. So on top of the lettuce, I've got these spring onions or juicy scallions. I prefer the scallions' gentle heat. Sometimes that acrid burn of a proper grown-up onion can be too much. More green, more crunch, with 2 chilies. Bit of delicate surgery needed here now as I de-seed. I mean, don't worry if some of those little round fiery pellets get left in, because a bit of warmth isn't a bad thing. These long chilies are, interestingly, much milder than the teeny weeny one. So if you're using a small chilli, just use one, not two. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that's the way it is. The dressing now. It's a green fattoush. It has to be a lime, doesn't it? I like the zest and the juice, and just grate the zest directly into the jug you're making the dressing in. Look at that. Nice bit of aromatherapy before everyone comes too. And a quick squeeze. Just squelch all the juice you can and as much pulp as wants to come out into the jug. Bit of salt. I'm putting about a teaspoon in, and some green olive oil. 3 tablespoons, do you? And now, very important, some glorious, tender cilantro, coriander. Just snip it in. A small handful, a quarter of a cup, whatever makes it easier for you. And a big fat handful of mint. And snip away merrily again. Don't worry about how big the leaves are, because in a sense you should think of these herbs as part of the salad, not a garnish. Okay, now I'm going to go to my avocado. Just scoop bits of avocado out with any spoon that has a sharp enough point to make it easy for you. Now the fattoush really means this, some bread toasted, which is going to be dampened in all that lush salad. I just gave it 5 minutes in a 425, 220 oven. I'm going to do away with the scissors at last. Just crumble it in. There's always a place for brute force in cooking. And now for its green glaze of dressing. Not a huge amount here, but what there is full of flavour. Now I'm going to try and toss this patiently so that there's more salad in the bowl than on my kitchen service. Oh, and just seeing this, I am overwhelmed with their deliciousness. Got the girls coming over and it's going to get a bit messy, very picky food. So I've got finger bowls. I'm going to add a spritz of lemon juice, which will help all our hands degrease a little. That doesn't sound too poetic, I know, but I'm going to add the poetry by plucking this beautiful rose and adding some of the petals, look at that, to the finger bowls. And then I'm going to strew the table with rose petals. Oh, it's going to be a nice dinner. I've done 66 little meatballs. This is my 67th. It's very easy to start making lovely marble-sized small meatballs and get bigger and bigger as you go along. So just carry on keeping them small. And actually, I find it tremendously satisfying. And I have this rather childish competition with myself as to how many I can get out of one batch. I'm aiming for 80, haven't got there yet. Okay, so I'm done. The pan's hot, so a bit of oil. Olive oil, but not extra virgin, and in they go. You'll probably need about 3 batches because it's important not to crowd the pan. You want these to colour, not just braise in their own liquid. I have a complete addiction to these meatballs. I love them stuffed into warm pitta or just plunged into a little bit of dip, even cold, plucked from the fridge for breakfast the next day. What you want is for each meatball to be crispy on the outside, but tender and melting and cooked through within. 5 minutes should do it fine. And we're done. You're loved. My red kidney bean dip has been out of the fridge and come back to room temperature. A sprinkling of the put aside lime zest. Oh. And I've got a little bit of feta. All you need to do to this is douse with lovely olive oil. Grate over a little bit of lemon zest. And sprinkle a green scattering of dried oregano. I've got some fizzy wine and some rather beautifully exotic rose syrup. Health and happiness.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give you some. What's that? Sorry. Delicious.